What if you open your eyes and found yourself on Mars, the red desert planet, silent, endless, and empty of life? Not in a dream, not in a simulation, but truly there, lying on your back beneath a sky the colour of rust and amber, breathing air that shouldn't exist, staring up at a sun that looks smaller and colder than it ever did from Earth. The ground beneath you is hard and unforgiving, covered in a fine dust that clings to everything it touches. Your fingers move slowly, testing reality, and the dust shifts like powder, like ash, like the remnants of something ancient that crumbled long before you arrived. There is no sound, not the wind, not the hum of distant traffic or the rustle of leaves or the voices of people going about their lives. Just silence, absolute, crushing, infinite silence. The kind that presses against your ears until you can hear your own heartbeat, your own breath, the faint creak of fabric as you shift your weight. You realize slowly that you're wearing a suit, not the clothes you remember putting on, not the familiar weight of cotton or denim, but something heavier, something designed for survival in a place where survival should not be possible. You sit up. The motion feels strange, lighter than it should be, as though gravity itself has loosened its grip. The horizon stretches out in every direction, a landscape of rust-coloured dunes and jagged rocks, of craters worn smooth by eons of wind and time. There are no trees, no buildings, no roads, no signs that anyone has ever been here before. Just the red desert, rolling away toward mountains that shimmer in the distance like mirages, their peaks sharp and alien against a sky that fades from salmon pink to deep ochre as your eyes adjust to the light. And then the question arrives, quiet and terrible, settling into your mind like a stone dropped into still water. How did you get here? You search your memory, reaching back through the fog, trying to find the last thing you remember. Was it morning? Were you at home? Were you walking somewhere, driving, falling asleep in your own bed? But the memories slip away like sand through your fingers, leaving only fragments. Faces without names, places without context, the vague sense that you were somewhere else, somewhere familiar, and then nothing. A gap, a void, and now this, Mars, the fourth planet from the Sun. A world that should be impossible to reach without years of training, without a spacecraft, without a mission and a crew, and a reason to be here. But you are here, alone. And the silence is so complete that it feels like the universe itself is holding its breath, waiting to see what you will do next. You stand slowly, testing the weight of your body in this lighter gravity. Each movement feels dreamlike, as though you're underwater, as though the laws of physics have been rewritten just for you. The suit you're wearing is bulky but functional, with tubes and seals and a helmet that rests nearby on the ground, its visor reflecting the pale sun. You pick it up, turning it over in your hands, and see your own face staring back at you, distorted, unfamiliar, framed by the curve of the glass. You look tired, confused, afraid, but you are breathing. The air inside the suit is thin but breathable, recycled through filters you cannot see, sustained by technology you do not understand. You glance around, searching for the source, and spot it a few meters away. A small module, half buried in the dust, its metal surface scarred and weathered, as though it has been here for years. Cables snake out from its base, disappearing into the ground, and a faint hum emanates from within. The only sound in this silent world, a mechanical heartbeat that tells you that you're not entirely without resources. You walk toward it, each step kicking up small clouds of dust that hang in the air longer than they should. drifting slowly back to the ground in the weak gravity. The module is unmarked, its surface covered in a thin layer of red powder, but there is a hatch on one side sealed tight. You reach for it, your gloved fingers fumbling with the latch, and after a moment it gives way with a hiss of escaping air. Inside, the space is cramped but organized. Shelves lined with supplies, water containers, food rations sealed in silver pouches, tools you recognize and others you do not. There is a small screen mounted on the wall, dark and lifeless, and a control panel covered in buttons and switches that mean nothing to you. But there is no message, no instructions, no explanation for why you are here or how you arrived. Just the supplies, the equipment, the silent promise that someone or something intended for you to survive. You step back outside, closing the hatch behind you, and look up at the sky. The sun hangs low on the horizon, smaller than you remember, casting long shadows across the desert. And there, faint but unmistakable, are two moons, Phobos and Deimos, the twin companions of Mars, moving slowly across the sky like watchful eyes. They are smaller than Earth's moon, irregular and pockmarked, more like captured asteroids than true satellites. But they are there, proof that this is real, that you're truly standing on another world. The realization settles over you like a weight. You're on Mars, alone, with no memory of how you arrived and no way to leave. The nearest human being is millions of kilometers away, separated from you by the cold vacuum of space, by distances so vast that even light takes minutes to cross them. If you called out, no one would hear. If you sent a signal, it would take at least 4 minutes to reach Earth. And that is only if anyone is listening, only if there is still an Earth to receive it. You are more alone than any human has ever been, and yet as you stand there beneath the alien sky, something stirs inside you. Not panic, not despair, but something quieter, something deeper. Curiosity, wonder. The slow, creeping realization that you are standing on a world that has existed for billions of years, a world that has seen the rise and fall of climates, the flow of ancient rivers, the possibility, however remote, of life. You're the first person to stand in this exact spot, to see this exact view, to breathe this exact moment. And despite the fear, despite the isolation, there is something almost sacred about that. You begin to walk, not toward anything in particular, but simply to move, to explore, to see what lies beyond the next dune. The landscape shifts as you go, revealing new textures and colours, patches of darker rock, veins of lighter sediment, the occasional boulder that looks as though it was dropped from the sky. The dust clings to your boots, leaving a trail of footprints behind you, the first marks of human presence on this ancient surface. And as you walk, you begin to notice details you missed before, the way the light catches on the edges of stones, the subtle variations in the colour of the soil, the faint patterns etched into the rock that could be erosion or could be something else. Could there be traces of the past here? Evidence of something that came before? Mars was not always this cold, this dry, this lifeless. Billions of years ago it had an atmosphere thick enough to hold warmth, oceans deep enough to cover much of its surface, rivers that carved valleys and canyons into the rock. Scientists have found evidence of ancient lake beds, of minerals that only form in the presence of water, of landscapes shaped by forces that no longer exist. If life ever arose on Mars, it would have been then, in those early days when the planet was young and the conditions were right. But that was long ago. The atmosphere thinned. The water froze or evaporated or sank into the ground. The surface became a desert, scoured by dust storms and radiation, frozen at night and baked by day. If life existed here, it either died out or retreated underground, into caves and aquifers where liquid water might still flow, where the cold and the radiation cannot reach. And if it survived, if it adapted, if it found a way to endure in the darkness beneath the surface, then it is still there, waiting, hidden from view. You stop walking and look down at the ground beneath your feet. What lies below? How deep does the dust go? Are there layers of ice just beneath the surface, frozen reservoirs left over from a wetter age? Are there tunnels carved by ancient rivers, caverns hollowed out by volcanic activity, spaces where the temperature is warmer and the pressure is higher and the conditions are just right for something to survive? The thought sends a shiver through you, not of fear, but of possibility. You're standing on a world that might not be as dead as it seems, but there is no way to know. Not without tools, without equipment, without the ability to dig and drill and analyze. All you have is what you can see, what you can touch, what you can piece together from the landscape around you. And so you keep walking, following the contours of the land, letting your feet carry you toward the mountains in the distance. They rise up like the spine of some ancient creature, their peaks sharp and jagged, their slopes covered in loose rock and scree. It would take hours to reach them, maybe days, but there's nowhere else to go, nothing else to do but move forward and see what lies ahead. As you walk, the sun begins to set. The sky shifts from amber to deep red, then to a dusky purple that seems to glow from within. The temperature drops rapidly, the warmth of the day bleeding away into the thin atmosphere, and you feel the cold seeping through the suit, through the layers of insulation, into your bones. Mars is a planet of extremes. During the day, the surface can reach temperatures just above freezing in the equatorial regions, warm enough for liquid water to exist, if only briefly, if only in the right conditions. But at night, the temperature plummets to more than 100 degrees below zero, cold enough to freeze carbon dioxide out of the air, cold enough to kill any unprotected organism in minutes. You glance back at the module, now a small speck on the horizon, and realize that you will need to return before the cold becomes unbearable. But not yet. Not while there is still light, still time to see what lies ahead. You press on, your breath fogging the inside of your helmet, your fingers growing numb despite the heating elements in your gloves, and then, just as the last light fades from the sky, you see it. A shape on the ground, half buried in the dust, too regular to be natural. You approach slowly, your heart pounding, and kneel down beside it. It is metal, corroded and pitted by time, but unmistakably artificial. A piece of machinery, perhaps, or part of a structure. You brush away the dust, revealing more of the surface, and see markings, symbols, letters, numbers, worn almost smooth but still visible. They are not in any language you recognize, not English, not Russian, not Chinese. Something else, something older, or something that was never meant for human eyes. You sit back on your heels, staring at the object, your mind racing. What is this? A relic from a past mission, lost and forgotten? Or something else? Something that was here long before humans ever dreamed of reaching Mars. The possibilities spiral out in every direction, each one more impossible than the last. But the object is real. You can touch it, feel the cold metal beneath your gloves, see the way the dust has settled into the grooves of the markings. It exists, and if it exists, then there must be an explanation. but the night is closing in and the cold is becoming dangerous. You mark the location in your mind, memorizing the shape of the nearby rocks, the angle of the mountains, the way the shadows fall. Then you turn and begin the long walk back to the module, your footprints glowing faintly in the light of the two moons. The silence is deeper now, heavier, as though the planet itself is settling into sleep. And as you walk, you cannot shake the feeling that you're being watched, that somewhere in the darkness something is aware of your presence. But when you look back, there is nothing, just the empty desert, stretching away into the night. You reach the module as the last warmth drains from the air, your body shaking with cold despite the suit's heating systems. The hatch opens with a hiss, and you stumble inside, sealing it behind you. The interior is warmer, the air stale but breathable, and you collapse onto the narrow bench that serves as a bed, your muscles aching from the walk. For a long time, you simply sit there, staring at the walls, trying to process what you have seen, the object, the markings, the sense that Mars is not as empty as it appears. You reach for one of the food pouches, tearing it open and forcing yourself to eat even though you have no appetite. The food is bland, tasteless, designed for nutrition rather than pleasure, but it is sustenance, and you will need your strength if you're to survive here. You drink from one of the water containers, the liquid cold and metallic, and then lie back on the bench, pulling a thin thermal blanket over yourself. Sleep does not come easily. Your mind is too full, too restless, replaying the events of the day over and over. The waking, the silence, the realization that you are alone on another world, and the object, half buried in the dust, its markings worn but still visible. What does it mean? Who left it there? And why can you not remember how you arrived? The questions circle endlessly, unanswered, until finally exhaustion overtakes you and you drift into a fitful sleep. Your dreams are strange, fragmented, filled with images of red deserts and distant mountains, of faces you cannot quite see and voices you cannot quite hear, and beneath it all, a sense of something waiting, something watching, something that has been here far longer than you. When you wake, the sun is already rising, its pale light filtering through the small window in the hatch. You sit up slowly, your body stiff and sore, and realize that you have survived your first night on Mars. The thought brings a strange sense of accomplishment, as though you have passed some invisible test. But the day ahead stretches out before you, empty and uncertain, and you know that survival is only the beginning. You step outside, blinking in the bright light, and look around. The landscape is the same as it was yesterday, red, barren, silent, but somehow it feels different now, familiar, as though you're beginning to understand its rhythms, its moods, its secrets. You walk back to the spot where you found the object, following your footprints from the night before, and kneel down beside it once more. In the daylight it is easier to see the details. The metal is old, ancient even, its surface covered in a patina that suggests centuries of exposure to the elements. The markings are more complex than you first realized, arranged in patterns that could be writing, or could be something else. Diagrams, perhaps, or maps. You trace them with your fingers, feeling the grooves beneath your gloves, and wonder what they're trying to say. And then you notice something else. A few meters away, partially hidden by a dune, is another object, and beyond that, another. You stand and walk toward them, your pulse quickening, and realize that they are not isolated artifacts but part of something larger. A trail, a path, leading away from the module toward the mountains, toward something you cannot yet see. You follow it, not because you have a choice, but because you have to know. Because the mystery has taken hold of you, and there is no turning back now. The objects become more frequent as you go, scattered across the landscape like breadcrumbs, each one slightly different but unmistakably connected. Some are small, no larger than your hand. Others are massive half-buried structures that rise out of the ground like the bones of some long-dead creature. And all of them bear the same markings, the same symbols, the same sense of purpose. What were they for? Who made them? And why are they here, on a planet that should be lifeless, on a world that humanity has only just begun to explore? The trail leads you to the base of the mountains, where the ground becomes steeper and the rocks more jagged. You climb carefully, testing each handhold, each foothold, your breath coming in short gasps as the thin atmosphere struggles to provide enough oxygen. The suit systems compensate, feeding you air from the recyclers, but it is not enough to make the climb easy. Your muscles burn, your lungs rake, and more than once you have to stop and rest, leaning against the rock and staring out at the desert below. From this height, you can see for kilometers in every direction. The module is a tiny speck on the horizon, barely visible against the red expanse, and beyond it, stretching away to the edge of the world, is nothing but desert, endless, empty, silent. It is beautiful in a way that is almost painful, a landscape so vast and so alien that it defies comprehension. And yet, as you stand there, you cannot shake the feeling that you're not alone, that somewhere, hidden beneath the surface or buried in the mountains or watching from the shadows, something else is here. You continue climbing, following the trail of objects as it winds up the mountainside. And then, just as the sun reaches its zenith, you see it. An opening in the rock, a cave or a tunnel, its entrance framed by more of the strange metal structures. They are larger here, more intact, their surfaces covered in intricate carvings that seem to shimmer in the light. You approach slowly, your heart pounding, and peer inside. The tunnel is dark, but not completely. There's a faint glow coming from somewhere deep within, a soft bluish light that pulses like a heartbeat. You hesitate, every instinct telling you to turn back, to return to the safety of the module, to leave this place and its mysteries behind. But you cannot. The pull is too strong, the need to know too great. And so you step inside, into the darkness, into the unknown. The tunnel is narrow at first, forcing you to crouch, but it widens as you go deeper. The walls are smooth, almost polished, as though they were carved by something other than natural forces. The light grows brighter, and you realize that it is coming from the walls themselves, from veins of some luminescent mineral that runs through the rock like blood through veins, is beautiful, otherworldly, and utterly impossible. And then the tunnel opens up into a chamber. It is vast, far larger than you expected, its ceiling lost in shadow. The walls are covered in the same carvings you saw outside, but here they are more elaborate, more detailed, telling a story you cannot yet read. And in the centre of the chamber, rising up from the floor like a monument, is a structure unlike anything you have ever seen. It is made of the same metal as the objects outside, but it is intact, pristine, as though it was built yesterday. Its surface is covered in panels and screens, some dark, some glowing with that same bluish light. And at its base, half hidden in shadow, is something that makes your breath catch in your throat. A figure, humanoid, but not human, tall and slender, its limbs too long, its proportions too strange. It is motionless, frozen in place, and for a moment you think it is a statue, a relic left behind by whoever built this place. But then you see the faint rise and fall of its chest, the slow, rhythmic movement that can only mean one thing. It is alive, or it was, or it is something in between, suspended in a state that defies definition. You approach slowly, your hands trembling, and reach out to touch it. The surface is cold, smooth, like glass or polished stone, and as your fingers make contact, the screens around you flicker to life, filling the chamber with light and sound. Images flash across the panels, landscapes, cities, faces, too fast to comprehend. And beneath it all, a voice, low and resonant, speaking in a language you do not understand but somehow feel in your bones. The chamber hums with energy, and you realize that you have activated something. Something that has been waiting here, dormant, for longer than you can imagine. The figure does not move, but the screens continue to flash. The voice continues to speak, and you stand there, frozen, unable to look away. What is this place? What is this being? And what does it want from you? The questions hang in the air, unanswered, as the light grows brighter and the voice grows louder. And then, just as suddenly as it began, it stops. The screens go dark, the voice falls silent, and you're left standing in the chamber, alone once more, with only the faint glow of the walls to guide you. You step back, your mind reeling, and turn to leave. But as you do, you catch a glimpse of something on one of the screens, a single image, frozen in place. It is a planet, blue and green and white, covered in oceans and clouds and continents. It is Earth, your home, the world you left behind, or were taken from, or somehow forgot. And beneath it, in symbols you can almost read, is a single word, a name, a warning, a promise. You do not know what it means, but you know, with a certainty that chills you to the core, that your presence here is not an accident, that you were brought to Mars for a reason, and that whatever that reason is, it is only just beginning to reveal itself. You leave the chamber and make your way back down the mountain, your thoughts a tangled mess of fear and wonder. The sun is lower now, casting long shadows across the desert, and you realize that you've been gone for hours. The module is still there, waiting for you, a small beacon of safety in the vast emptiness. But as you approach, you notice something that makes you stop in your tracks. There are new footprints in the dust, not yours, larger, deeper, leading away from the module and disappearing into the distance. You follow them with your eyes, tracing their path across the desert, and feel a chill run down your spine. You are not alone. You never were. Someone, or something, has been here, and they are still out there somewhere, watching. You enter the module and seal the hatch behind you, your hands shaking. The supplies are untouched, the equipment undisturbed, but the sense of violation is overwhelming. This was your sanctuary, your only refuge, and now it feels compromised, unsafe. You check the control panel, searching for any sign of tampering, but everything appears normal. The systems are functioning, the air is breathable, the water is clean, but the footprints are real. You saw them, and they mean that you're not the only one on this planet. The night falls quickly, and you lie on the bench staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. Every sound makes you jump. The creak of the module settling, the hiss of the air recyclers, the faint whistle of wind outside. You tell yourself that it is nothing, that you're imagining things, that the isolation is playing tricks on your mind. But deep down you know the truth. Mars is not empty. It never was. And whatever is out there, it knows you are here. The days that follow blur together, each one a repetition of the last. You wake, you eat, you venture outside to explore. You return to the chamber in the mountains, studying the carvings, trying to decipher the symbols, searching for answers. But the more you learn, the less you understand. The structure is ancient, far older than any human civilization, and yet it is functional, operational, as though it was built to last forever. The figure remains motionless, suspended in its strange sleep, and the screens remain dark, refusing to reveal their secrets. But the footprints continue to appear, sometimes near the module, sometimes farther away, always leading in different directions. You try to follow them, but they vanish into the desert, swallowed by the dust and the wind. And each time you return, you find new ones, as though whoever or whatever is making them is circling you, studying you, waiting for something. The isolation begins to weigh on you, not just the physical isolation, but the mental, the emotional. You are alone in a way that no human has ever been, cut off from everything and everyone you've ever known. There is no one to talk to, no one to share your thoughts with, no one to reassure you that you are not going mad. The silence is constant, oppressive, broken only by the sound of your own breathing and the faint hum of the module's systems. And in that silence, your mind begins to wander, to question, to doubt. Are you really on Mars? Or is this some kind of simulation? Some elaborate test designed to see how you will react? Are the footprints real, or are they hallucinations, products of a mind pushed to its limits? Is the chamber in the mountains a genuine discovery, or is it something your brain has constructed to make sense of the senseless? You do not know, and the not knowing is the worst part. But then, one day, something changes. You're outside, walking the perimeter of the module, when you see it. A light in the distance, faint but unmistakable, flickering like a flame. You stop and stare, your heart pounding, and realize that it is moving, coming closer. You stand frozen, unsure whether to run or to wait. And then the light resolves into a shape, a figure, walking toward you across the desert. It is not human. You can see that even from a distance. It is too tall, too thin, its movements too fluid, too graceful. But it is not hostile. It does not rush, does not threaten. It simply walks, steadily, purposefully, until it is standing a few meters away, its face, if it has a face, hidden in shadow. You stare at each other, neither moving, neither speaking, and then, slowly, the figure raises one hand and points, not at you, but past you, toward the mountains, toward the chamber. And you understand. It wants you to follow. It wants to show you something. You hesitate, every instinct screaming at you to run, to hide, to seal yourself inside the module and never come out. But curiosity wins, as it always does, and you nod. The figure turns and begins to walk, and you follow, your legs moving almost of their own accord. The journey takes hours, the figure moving at a steady pace that you struggle to match. The sun sets and rises again, and still you walk, following the silent guide across the desert and up into the mountains, and finally you reach the chamber once more, the entrance glowing with that same bluish light. The figure stops and gestures for you to enter. You do, stepping into the familiar space, and see that something has changed. The screens are active, displaying images and data in a language you still cannot read, and the figure at the center of the chamber, the one you thought was frozen, suspended, is moving. Slowly, stiffly, as though wakened from a long sleep. It turns to look at you, and you see its eyes, large, dark, filled with something that might be recognition or might be sorrow. And then it speaks, its voice echoing through the chamber, and though you do not understand the words, you understand the meaning. You are brought here, not by accident, not by chance, but by design. Mars is not a dead world. It is a waiting world, a world that has been watching, listening, preparing, and you are part of that preparation, a piece of a puzzle that spans millennia, a link in a chain that connects the past to the future. The figure reaches out, and you take its hand, feeling the cold, smooth surface beneath your gloves, and in that moment, you understand. You're not alone. You never were. Mars has always been alive in ways that humanity has yet to comprehend. And now, standing in this ancient chamber, surrounded by the remnants of a civilization that rose and fell long before your own, you realize that your journey is only beginning. The screens flicker, and you see images of Earth, of cities and oceans and forests. And then you see Mars as it once was, green and blue, covered in water, teeming with life. And you see the future, a vision of what could be, of what might be, if humanity can learn the lessons that Mars has to teach. You do not know if you will ever return to Earth. You do not know if you will ever see another human face, hear another human voice. But you know, with a certainty that fills you with both fear and hope, that you are exactly where you are meant to be. And as the light in the chamber grows brighter, as the voice of the ancient figure fills your mind, you close your eyes and let yourself drift, carried by the current of something far larger than yourself, something that has been waiting for you since the moment you opened your eyes on this red, silent world. Time loses meaning after that. Days blend into nights, and nights into days, and you find yourself moving through the landscape like a ghost, guided by the figure, by the lights, by the whispers that seem to come from the rocks themselves. You learn to read the symbols, slowly, painstakingly, piecing together the story they tell. It is a story of rise and fall, of civilizations that reached for the stars and then collapsed, of worlds that were once alive and then died, of cycles that repeat endlessly, eternally. Mars was not always a desert. It was a garden, a paradise, a world where life flourished in forms you can barely imagine. But something happened. A catastrophe, a war, a slow decline, and the atmosphere thinned, the water vanished, the life retreated underground. And those who remained, those who survived, built the chambers, the structures, the monuments as a warning and a promise. A warning to those who would come after, and a promise that life, in some form, would endure. You're part of that promise now. You do not know how or why, but you feel it in your bones, in the rhythm of your heartbeat, in the way the planet seems to breathe around you. Mars is not dead. It is sleeping, and you are here to witness its awakening. The figure leads you deeper into the mountains, into tunnels that wind through the rock like veins, into chambers filled with technology you cannot comprehend. You see machines that hum with energy, screens that display star maps and planetary orbits, devices that seem to manipulate the very fabric of space and time. And you see others like the figure, tall, slender, silent, standing in alcoves, waiting, watching, their eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. They do not speak, but you feel their presence, their awareness. They are the guardians, the keepers of the knowledge, the last remnants of a civilization that once spanned the solar system. And they have been waiting for you, or for someone like you, for longer than you can imagine. One day, or perhaps it is night, you can no longer tell, the figure brings you to a chamber unlike any you have seen before. It is vast, its ceiling so high that it disappears into shadow, and at its centre is a pool of liquid, dark and still, reflecting the faint light from the walls. The figure gestures for you to approach, and you do, kneeling at the edge of the pool and staring into its depths. At first, you see nothing, just darkness, infinite and empty. But then slowly, images begin to form. You see Earth, spinning in the void, its surface covered in lights and cities and the scars of industry. You see Mars as it is now, red and barren, and as it was, green and alive. You see other worlds, other planets, some familiar and some utterly alien. And you see yourself, standing on the edge of the pool, staring into the water, your reflection distorted and strange. And then you see something else, a vision, a possibility, a future that has not yet come to pass. You see Mars transformed, its atmosphere thickened, its surface covered in water and vegetation, its cities rising from the dust like flowers after rain. You see humans and the Guardians working together, building, creating, shaping the planet into something new. And you see yourself among them, no longer alone, no longer lost, but part of something greater. Is this real? Or is it a dream, a hope, a fantasy conjured by a mind desperate for meaning? You do not know. But as you stare into the pool, you feel something shift inside you, a sense of purpose, of belonging, of understanding. You are brought here for a reason, not to survive, not to explore, but to witness, to learn, to carry the knowledge forward into whatever future awaits. The figure places a hand on your shoulder, and you look up, meeting its gaze, and in that moment you understand. You are not a prisoner on Mars. You are a messenger, a bridge between worlds, between times, between the past and the future, and your journey, though it began in confusion and fear, has led you to something far greater than you ever imagined. You stand and turn away from the pool, following the figure back through the tunnels, back toward the surface. The sun is rising as you emerge, casting long shadows across the desert, and you see the module in the distance, small and fragile against the vastness of the landscape. But it no longer feels like a prison. It feels like a beginning. You walk back slowly, savouring the feel of the ground beneath your feet, the weight of the suit, the sound of your own breathing. And as you reach the module, you turn and look back at the mountains, at the chambers hidden within, at the secrets they hold. You do not know what will happen next. You do not know if you will ever leave this planet, if you will ever see Earth again, if you will ever understand the full truth of why you are here. But you know that you are not alone, that Mars is not empty, that the universe is far stranger, far more wondrous than you ever dared to imagine. And that is enough. For now, it is enough. The days continue, each one a little easier than the last. You fall into a rhythm, a routine, a way of living that feels almost natural. You wake with the sun, you explore the desert, you return to the chamber in the mountains to study the symbols and the screens. The figure visits you sometimes, appearing without warning, guiding you to new places, showing you new wonders, and slowly, piece by piece, you begin to understand. Mars is a library, a repository of knowledge, of history, of the accumulated wisdom of countless civilizations that rose and fell across the solar system. The chambers are archives, the structures are monuments, the symbols are a language designed to transcend time and space, and you are the reader, the student, the one who has been chosen, or who chose yourself to learn. But why you? Why now? The question haunts you even as you accept your role. Are you special, or are you simply the first to arrive? Are you part of a plan, or are you an accident, a random variable in a cosmic equation? You do not know, and perhaps you never will. But as the weeks turn into months, as the seasons shift and the dust storms come and go, you begin to feel something you have not felt since you first opened your eyes on this red world. Peace. Not happiness, not contentment, but a deep, abiding peace that comes from knowing your place in the universe, from understanding that you are part of something larger than yourself. You still think about Earth sometimes, about the people you left behind, the life you once had, the world that seems so distant now. But the memories are fading, becoming less real, less important. Mars is your home now. The desert is your landscape. The silence is your companion. The guardians are your teachers. And though you are alone, you are not lonely. One night, as you lie on the bench in the module staring at the ceiling, you hear a sound, faint, distant, but unmistakable. A voice, human, speaking your language. You sit up, your heart racing, and listen. It is coming from the control panel, from the screen that has been dark since you arrived. You rush over and see that it is active, displaying a message, a transmission from Earth. The words are garbled, broken by static, but you can make out enough to understand. A mission, a crew, coming to Mars, looking for you. They know you are here. They are coming to bring you home. You stare at the screen, your mind reeling. Home. The word feels strange, foreign, as though it belongs to another life, another person. Do you want to go home? Do you want to leave this place, these secrets, this knowledge? Do you want to return to a world that no longer feels like yours? You do not know, and as the transmission fades, as the screen goes dark once more, you realize that you do not have to decide. Not yet. Not until they arrive. And when they do, you will be ready. Ready to tell them what you have learned, what you have seen, what Mars has taught you, or ready to stay, to remain here on this red world, as a guardian yourself, a keeper of the knowledge, a bridge between the past and the future. The choice is yours. And for the first time since you woke up on Mars, you feel truly free. The transmission changes everything and nothing. You continue your routine, your explorations, your studies, but now there is a sense of anticipation, of waiting. The crew is coming. They will arrive in weeks, maybe months, and when they do, your solitude will end. You will no longer be alone. You will have to explain, to justify, to make sense of the impossible. But how do you explain what you have seen? How do you describe the chambers, the guardians, the visions in the pool? How do you convince them that Mars is not dead, that it is alive in ways they cannot yet comprehend? Will they believe you? Or will they think you have gone mad, that the isolation has broken you, that your mind has conjured fantasies to cope with the loneliness? You do not know. But you prepare, gathering evidence, documenting everything, recording the symbols and the images and the locations. You return to the chamber in the mountains one last time, standing before the figure, the guardian, the keeper of secrets, and you ask silently what you should do. The figure does not answer, but the screens flicker to life, displaying a single image. Earth and Mars, side by side, connected by a line of light, and you understand. The message is not for you alone. It is for all of humanity. A message that says, you are not alone, you have never been alone, and the universe is waiting for you to wake up. The crew listens in silence as you speak, their faces invisible behind their visors, but their body language betraying their emotions. Skepticism, confusion, wonder, fear. You tell them about waking up alone, about the module, about the footprints in the dust. You tell them about the chamber in the mountains, about the guardians, about the screens that showed visions of Mars as it once was and as it might be again. And as you speak, you watch them glance at each other, watch them shift their weight, watch them struggle to reconcile what you're saying with everything they thought they knew. When you finish, there is a long silence. The wind picks up, carrying dust across the desert, and the sun continues its slow descent toward the horizon. Finally, one of them steps forward. A woman, you think, based on her height and build, and speaks, her voice crackling through the suit's communication system. "Show us," she says. Simple, direct, and you nod. You lead them across the desert, retracing the path you've walked so many times before. The crew follows in a tight formation, their movements cautious, their hands never far from the equipment belts at their waists. They are trained for this, you realize. Trained for first contact, for the unexpected, for scenarios that should be impossible. But nothing could have trained them for this. For you. For what you're about to show them. The walk takes hours, and as you go, they ask questions. How long have you been here? Where did you come from? How did you survive? And you answer as best you can, though your answers raise more questions than they resolve. You do not know how you arrived. You do not remember your life before Mars. All you know is what you have learned here, in this place, from this planet that has become your teacher and your home. Memory loss, one of them mutters. Trauma, isolation psychosis. But another voice cuts in, sharper. Look at the equipment. Look at the suit. That's not from any mission we've sent. The design is wrong. The materials are wrong. It's too advanced. You say nothing. Let them debate. Let them theorize. Soon enough they will see for themselves. The mountains rise before you as darkness falls, their peaks silhouetted against a sky that deepens from amber to violet to the rich, star-studded black of a Martian night. You activate the light on your suit, and the others do the same, their beams cutting through the darkness, illuminating the path ahead. And then you reach the entrance to the chamber, the metal structures framing the opening, the carvings catching the light and seeming to shimmer with an inner luminescence. The crew stops, and you hear their breathing quicken over the communication channel. One of them approaches the structures, running gloved fingers over the carvings, and you hear the sharp intake of breath. These markings, they're not human. The style, the symmetry, it's all wrong. This is... The voice trails off, unable or unwilling to finish the thought. This is what I wanted to show you, you say quietly. This is why I stayed. You enter the tunnel, and they follow, their lights bobbing and weaving in the darkness. The glowing veins in the walls pulse gently, and you hear someone whisper, "Bioluminescence? On Mars? That's impossible." "Everything here is impossible," you reply, "until it isn't." The tunnel opens into the chamber and the crew spreads out, their lights sweeping across the vast space, illuminating the carvings on the walls, the structure in the centre, the dormant screens. And there, in the alcove, still motionless but somehow more present than before, is the Guardian, the figure you have come to know, the being that has guided you through your journey on this world. The crew freezes. For a long moment, no one moves, no one speaks, and then the woman who spoke before steps forward, her light focused on the Guardian's face, on those large dark eyes that seem to hold entire universes within them. "My God," she breathes, "it's real. It's actually real." Another crew member, a man by the sound of his voice, is examining the structure in the centre of the chamber, his hands moving over the panels and screens with a mixture of reverence and disbelief. This technology, I've never seen anything like it. The integration, the design principles, it's centuries beyond anything we have, maybe millennia. Or it's from a completely different evolutionary path, someone else suggests. A different way of thinking about engineering, about physics. This isn't just advanced, it's alien. The word hangs in the air, heavy and undeniable. Alien, not human, not from Earth. Evidence of life beyond your homeworld, beyond the familiar, beyond everything humanity has believed about its place in the cosmos. And it is here, on Mars, the planet that was supposed to be dead, that was supposed to be nothing more than a stepping stone on humanity's journey to the stars. You watch as they explore, as they document, as they try to make sense of what they are seeing. Their initial skepticism has given way to a kind of frenzied excitement, a hunger to understand, to catalogue, to explain. They are scientists, explorers, pioneers. This is what they live for. And yet, as you watch them, you feel a strange disconnect, a sense that they are missing something essential, something that cannot be measured or recorded or analysed. They are looking at Mars as a puzzle to be solved. But Mars is not a puzzle. It is a living thing, a consciousness, a presence that has been waiting for this moment for eons, and the Guardians are not relics to be studied. They are teachers, custodians of knowledge that humanity is only beginning to be ready to receive. You approach the Guardian, and as you do, the screens flicker to life, just as they did before. The crew gasps, turning to watch as images flash across the panels, star maps, planetary systems, equations and diagrams that seem to describe the fundamental structure of reality itself. And then, as before, the images slow, focusing on a single scene, Earth and Mars, side by side, connected by a line of light. "What is that?" someone asks. "A wormhole? A communication link? Some kind of energy transfer?" "It's a bridge," you say softly. "A connection." Mars is trying to tell us something. It's been trying to tell us for a long time. The woman turns to you, and though you cannot see her face, you can hear the intensity in her voice. What is it trying to tell us? You hesitate, searching for the right words. How do you explain what you have learned, what you have felt, what you have come to understand in your time here? How do you convey the sense of purpose, of destiny, of a story that is far larger than any individual life? That we're not alone, you say finally, that we never have been, that the universe is full of life, full of civilizations that have risen and fallen, full of knowledge and wisdom and mistakes. And that Mars is a library, a warning, a gift. It's all of those things. You gesture to the carvings on the walls, to the screens displaying their incomprehensible data. The beings who built this place, they understood something that we're only beginning to learn. That life is not a competition, it's a collaboration. That the universe doesn't belong to any one species, any one world. It belongs to all of us. And if we're going to survive, if we're going to thrive, we need to learn to work together, to share, to listen. The chamber falls silent, and you can feel the weight of your words settling over the crew. Some of them seem skeptical still, clinging to their training, their protocols, their need for empirical evidence. But others, you can see it in the way they move, in the subtle shifts of their posture, are beginning to understand. One of them approaches you, a younger man whose voice carries a note of wonder. "You're saying that all of this, the structures, the guardians, the technology, it was left here as a message. For us?" "Not just for us," you reply. "For anyone who would come, for anyone who would listen." Mars was a thriving world once, billions of years ago, and it died, or nearly died, for reasons we're still trying to understand. Climate change, asteroid impacts, the loss of its magnetic field. There are theories, but no definitive answers. But before it died, the beings who lived here, the guardians or their ancestors, they preserved their knowledge. They built these chambers, these archives, so that future civilizations wouldn't make the same mistakes, so that we would have a chance to learn from what came before. The woman is silent for a moment, processing. Then, if that's true, if this is all real, then we need to bring this back to Earth. We need to show them. The world needs to know. But even as she speaks, you see the Guardian move. It is subtle, almost imperceptible, but you have learned to read its gestures, its expressions, and you understand what it is trying to say. We can't, you say. Not yet. The knowledge here, it's not something that can be taken. It has to be earned, understood. We're not ready. Not ready. The woman's voice rises, incredulous. This is the most important discovery in human history. This changes everything. Our understanding of the universe, of life, of our place in the cosmos. How can we not be ready? Because we'll try to weaponize it, you say bluntly. We'll try to own it, to control it, to use it for power and profit. We'll turn it into a tool for division instead of unity. And that's not what the Guardians want. That's not what Mars is offering. The crew exchanges glances and you can feel the tension rising. They have a mission, orders, protocols to follow, and you are asking them to go against all of that, to trust in something that cannot be measured or quantified, something that exists in the realm of faith and intuition rather than data and evidence. The younger man speaks up again. Then what do? We can't just leave this here. We can't pretend we didn't see it. We don't leave it, you say. We learn from it. We study it here on Mars. We bring people, scientists, philosophers, artists, teachers, people who can approach this knowledge with humility and respect. And we let Mars teach us, slowly, carefully, the way it taught me. And when we're ready, when we've proven that we can be trusted, then we share what we've learned with the rest of humanity. It is a radical proposal, and you can see the resistance in their body language, hear it in the silence that follows. But you can also see something else, a glimmer of possibility, a recognition that perhaps, just perhaps, you are right. The woman finally speaks, her voice measured. That's not a decision we can make on our own. We'll need to report this to Mission Control, to Earth. They'll have to decide what comes next. I know, you say. But when you report it, tell them what I said. Tell them that Mars is not a resource to be exploited. It's a teacher, and we need to be students, not conquerors. The crew spends hours in the chamber, documenting everything they can, taking samples, recording measurements. You watch them work, answering their questions when you can, but mostly staying silent, letting them process what they are seeing in their own way. And as you watch, you see the Guardian, still and silent, its eyes following the movements of the crew with an expression that might be approval or might be concern. When they finally finish, when their equipment is packed and their data secured, the woman approaches you once more. We need to get you back to the lander, she says. You've been out here alone for too long. You need medical attention, psychological evaluation. You need to come home. Home, that word again. But this time it does not feel foreign, it feels complicated. Because home is not a place anymore. It is a state of being, a sense of belonging that you have found here, on Mars, in the silence and the solitude and the strange, profound connection you have formed with this world. I'll come with you, you say. But I'm not leaving Mars. Not permanently. I need to be here. This is where I'm supposed to be. She nods slowly, as though she expected this answer. We'll talk about it. But for now, let's get you somewhere safe. The journey back to the lander is quiet. The crew subdued, each of them lost in their own thoughts. You walk among them, no longer an outsider, no longer a mystery, but not quite one of them either. You are something in between, a bridge, a translator, a person who has walked in two worlds and can speak the language of both. When you reach the lander, they usher you inside, sealing the hatch behind you. The interior is cramped but clean, filled with equipment and supplies, and the air is thick with the smell of recycled oxygen and human sweat. It feels alien after so long in the open desert, so long with only the silence and the wind for company. But it also feels safe, enclosed, protected. They remove your helmet and you see their faces for the first time, young, earnest, exhausted. The woman who's been speaking introduces herself as Commander Sarah Chen, a geologist and mission leader. The young man is Dr. Marcus Okafor, a biologist. The others have names and specialties, but they blur together in your mind, too many faces, too many voices after so long alone. Chen examines you with a practiced eye, checking your vitals, your reflexes, your responses. You're dehydrated, she says, malnourished, but considering what you've been through, you're in remarkably good shape. How long did you say you've been here? I don't know, you admit. Months, I think. Maybe longer. Time doesn't work the same way here. She frowns but does not push. Instead, she hands you a water pouch and a nutrient bar, and you eat and drink gratefully. The flavours almost overwhelming after so long surviving on the bland rations from the module. As you eat, the crew gathers around, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and concern. Okafor leans forward, his eyes bright with excitement. The organism we found in the chamber, the Guardian, as you call it. Do you know what it is? Where it came from? You shake your head. I know what it showed me. Images, visions, fragments of a history that spans millions of years. But I don't know if it's a biological entity, a synthetic construct, or something in between. I don't even know if those categories apply. It's something else, something beyond our current understanding. But it's alive, Okafor insists. We detected respiration, metabolic activity, faint but present. It's alive, you agree, but not in the way we usually think of life. It's more like a vessel, a container for knowledge, for memory, for the accumulated wisdom of an entire civilization. It's alive because the knowledge is alive, because stories, ideas, understanding, those things have their own kind of life. The crew exchanges glances, and you can see that some of them think you have gone mad, that the isolation has broken something fundamental in your mind. But others, Chen, Okafor, a few of the others, they are listening with an openness that gives you hope. Chen pulls out a tablet, scrolling through data. We need to establish a base camp near the chamber, a permanent research station. If what you're saying is true, if Mars really is a repository of alien knowledge, then we need to study it properly, carefully, with the resources and expertise it deserves. Yes, you say, but not a military base, not a corporate outpost. It needs to be neutral ground, a place where all of humanity can come to learn, regardless of nationality or ideology. Chen looks at you for a long moment, then nods. I'll recommend that in my report, but you understand that the decision isn't mine to make. Once we transmit what we've found, Once Earth knows what's here, there will be pressure from governments, from corporations, from everyone who wants to claim a piece of this discovery. I know, you say. That's why I need to stay, to protect it, to make sure that Mars is treated with the respect it deserves. The lander's communication system crackles to life, and a voice from orbit fills the cabin, the ship's captain checking in, asking for a status update. Chen moves to the console, and you hear her begin to report, her voice steady and professional as she describes what they have found. But even as she speaks, you can hear the disbelief in the captain's responses, the demands for proof, for evidence, for something concrete that could be verified and analysed. It is beginning, you realise. The process of translation, of taking something ineffable and mysterious and reducing it to data points and scientific papers. It is necessary, perhaps inevitable, but something will be lost in the process. The magic, the wonder, the sense of standing in the presence of something greater than yourself. You close your eyes and let yourself drift, exhausted beyond measure. And as you drift, you hear the voice of the Guardian in your mind, not in words but in feelings, in impressions. It is not angry at the intrusion, not threatened by the arrival of others. It is patient, waiting, knowing that this is only the beginning, that the true test is yet to come. When you wake, the lander is quiet. Most of the crew asleep in their bunks. Only Chen is awake, sitting at the console, staring at the screens with an expression you cannot quite read. You sit up and she turns to look at you. Can't sleep, you ask? She shakes her head. Too much to process. Too many implications. She pauses, then, I've been thinking about what you said, about Mars being a teacher, about us not being ready, and I think you're right. I've spent my entire career studying planets, analysing geological formations, searching for signs of ancient life, and I always approached it as a scientist, objective, detached, analytical. But this is different. Standing in that chamber, seeing the Guardian, feeling the weight of all that history, I realised that we can't approach this the way we've approached everything else. We can't just take samples and run experiments and publish papers. We need to change our entire mindset. You nod, feeling a surge of relief. That's exactly it. Mars is offering us a gift, but it's also testing us. Testing whether we're mature enough, wise enough, to handle what it has to teach us. Chen is silent for a moment, then. You've changed. Since you came here, you're not the same person you were before. I don't remember who I was before, you say honestly. But yes, Mars changed me. Or maybe it revealed something that was always there, waiting to be discovered. Do you ever want to remember your life before? The question catches you off guard. Do you? There are moments when you feel the absence of those memories like a phantom limb, an ache for something you cannot name. But there are other moments when you are grateful for the blank slate, for the chance to be someone new, someone shaped by this red world rather than the blue one you left behind. Sometimes, you say finally. But I'm also afraid that if I remember, I'll lose what I've gained here. The connection, the understanding, the sense of purpose. I don't want to go back to being someone who sees Mars as just another planet, just another rock in space, because it's so much more than that. Chen nods slowly. When we get back to Earth, if you come back with us, there will be doctors, therapists, people who will want to help you recover those memories. But if you don't want that, if you want to stay here, I'll support you. I'll make sure they understand. Thank you, you say, and you mean it. Because despite everything, Despite the strangeness and the isolation and the impossibility of your situation, you have found something here that most people spend their entire lives searching for. You have found meaning, purpose, a reason to exist that goes beyond survival, beyond comfort, beyond the small concerns of individual life. The days that follow fall into a new rhythm. The crew establishes a temporary camp near your module, setting up habitats and equipment, creating a small outpost on the Martian surface. More supplies arrive from orbit, lowered on tethers and parachutes, and slowly the camp takes shape. A cluster of inflatable domes and rigid structures, connected by pressurized tunnels, surrounded by solar panels and communication arrays. You help where you can, but mostly you act as a guide, leading expeditions to the chamber, translating what you have learned about the symbols and the structures, sharing your knowledge of the landscape and its secrets. The crew treats you with a mixture of respect and wariness, uncertain how to categorize you, how to fit you into their understanding of the mission. But slowly, as the weeks pass, barriers begin to break down. You share meals with them in the communal dome, listening to their stories of Earth, of training, of families left behind, and in turn, you tell them about your journey, about the footprints in the dust, about the Guardian, and the visions and the slow, profound transformation you have undergone. Some of them remain skeptical, clinging to conventional explanations, hallucinations, delusions, the effects of isolation on the human mind. But others are more open, more willing to consider that there are things in the universe that cannot be easily explained, phenomena that exist at the intersection of science and mystery. Okafor becomes a frequent companion, his enthusiasm for the biological possibilities of the Guardian infectious. He spends hours in the chamber, running non-invasive scans, collecting data, trying to understand the organism's structure and function. And slowly, painstakingly, patterns begin to emerge. "It's not carbon-based," he tells you one day, his voice trembling with excitement. Or rather, it is, but not in the way we understand it. The molecular structure is completely different, built on a foundation we've never seen before. It's like it evolved under different chemical conditions, different environmental pressures. This isn't just alien life, it's an entirely different form of life. You listen as he explains the data, the graphs and charts and molecular diagrams that mean little to you but everything to him. And you understand that this is his way of approaching the mystery, of making sense of the inexplicable. He needs the science, the evidence, the concrete proof. And that is okay, because not everyone can experience Mars the way you have. Not everyone can hear the whispers in the wind, feel the presence of the Guardians, sense the consciousness of the planet itself. But perhaps, through his science, through Chen's geology, through the work of all these specialists and experts, they can build a bridge between the rational and the mystical, between what can be measured and what can only be felt. One evening, as the sun sets and the crew gathers for their evening meal, Chen makes an announcement. "We've received approval from Earth. They're sending a larger expedition. Scientists, engineers, linguists, even some philosophers and ethicists. They'll arrive in 6 months, and when they do, we'll begin constructing a permanent research station. Mars is officially becoming humanity's first extraterrestrial research facility." The crew erupts in cheers, in celebration, but you feel a knot of anxiety forming in your stomach. 6 months. And then an influx of people, of equipment, of the full weight of human civilization bearing down on this fragile ancient place. You catch Chen's eye, and she sees your concern. Later, after the meal, she pulls you aside. I know what you're thinking, she says, and I share your concerns. But I've made it clear in my reports that this site needs to be protected, that we can't just tear it apart in the name of research. The protocols we establish now will set the precedent for how humanity interacts with alien sites in the future. We have a responsibility to get this right. And if Earth doesn't listen, if they decide that profit or power or national security is more important than protection, Chen's expression hardens. Then we fight, we make noise, we go public, we make sure that the world knows what's at stake. But I have to believe that humanity is capable of rising to this moment, of treating this discovery with the reverence it deserves. You want to share her optimism, but you have seen too much, learned too much from the Guardians. You have seen the evidence of civilizations that rose to great heights and then fell, that made the wrong choices at critical moments, that allowed fear or greed or short-sightedness to guide their decisions. Mars itself is a monument to what happens when a world loses its balance, when the conditions for life slip away and cannot be recovered. But you also know that despair is not the answer, that if there is any hope for humanity, any chance that you will survive your own critical moment, it lies in places like this, in the willingness to learn from the past, to listen to the wisdom of those who came before, to approach the unknown with humility rather than hubris. So you nod, accepting Chen's words, and resolve to do what you can, to be the voice of Mars, the advocate for the Guardians, the bridge between two worlds that desperately need each other. The months pass, and the work continues. The crew makes dozens of trips to the chamber, documenting every carving, every symbol, every piece of technology. They discover other sites, smaller chambers scattered across the region, connected by underground tunnels, each one containing its own treasures of knowledge and mystery. And slowly, piece by piece, a picture begins to emerge. Mars was once home to a sophisticated civilization, a species that evolved over millions of years and reached a level of technological advancement that rivaled or exceeded anything humanity has achieved. But they were not conquerors, not empire builders. They were explorers, philosophers, seekers of understanding. They spread across their world, building cities and structures that worked in harmony with the environment rather than against it. And they learned to manipulate the fundamental forces of nature, gravity, energy, even time itself, in ways that still defy human comprehension. But something went wrong. The planet's climate began to change, slowly at first and then more rapidly. The atmosphere thinned, the water disappeared, the surface became hostile to life, and despite all their knowledge, all their technology, they could not stop it. They could only adapt, retreating underground, preserving what they could, hoping that someday, somehow, their legacy would endure. The Guardians are the last of them, or perhaps not the last, but the Watchers, the keepers of the flame. They exist in a state between life and death, sustained by technology and will, waiting for others to arrive, to learn, to carry the story forward. It is a sobering tale, a reminder of the fragility of life, of the impermanence of even the greatest civilizations. But it is also a story of hope, of resilience, of the determination to leave something behind that might make a difference. And now humanity stands at the threshold, the same threshold that the Martians faced, the same critical moment when choices must be made. Will Earth learn from Mars's fate? Will humanity take the warnings seriously, change its course, find a way to live sustainably on its own world? Or will it repeat the same mistakes, the same patterns of exploitation and short-sightedness, until it too becomes a red desert, a silent monument to what might have been? You do not know the answer, but you know that you have a role to play in shaping it. The night before the new expedition is scheduled to arrive, you return to the chamber one last time, alone. You have not been back in weeks, busy with the preparations, the briefings, the endless questions from the crew, but tonight, you need to be here, in this space that has become sacred to you, to say goodbye to the solitude that has defined your time on Mars. You stand before the Guardian, and it seems to you that its eyes are more luminous than before, that there is a warmth in its gaze that was not there when you first arrived. Or perhaps it is simply that you have learned to see it, to understand the subtle language of this alien presence. "Thank you," you say aloud, your voice echoing in the vast chamber, "for everything you've taught me, for changing me, for showing me that there is more to existence than I ever imagined." The screens flicker and an image appears, not Earth, not Mars, but something else. A spiral, a pattern, a symbol that seems to represent the flow of time, the cycles of creation and destruction that govern all things. And you understand that this is the Guardian's final lesson, the last piece of wisdom it has to offer. Everything ends. Everything changes, but nothing is ever truly lost. The energy, the matter, the information, it all persists, transforming, evolving, becoming something new. Death is not an ending, but a transition, and every ending contains within it the seeds of a new beginning. Mars died, but it did not disappear. It transformed, became something else, a keeper of memories, a teacher for those who would come after, and humanity, standing on the brink of its own transformation, has the chance to learn from that example, to embrace change rather than fear it, to find a way forward that honours both the past and the future. You bow your head, feeling the weight of that understanding settle over you. And then you turn and walk back through the tunnel, back toward the surface, back toward the world of humans and their machines and their endless, beautiful, frustrating attempts to make sense of the cosmos. When you emerge, the stars are brilliant overhead, undimmed by atmosphere or light pollution, a reminder of the vastness of the universe and the smallness of individual lives within it. But you do not feel small. You feel connected, part of something vast and ancient and ongoing, a thread in a tapestry that stretches across space and time. The larger expedition arrives not as a single event, but as a series of them. Ships descending from orbit over the course of weeks, each one carrying personnel and equipment, each one changing the character of the camp a little more. What was once a small outpost of inflatable domes becomes a sprawling complex of modules and laboratories, of greenhouses and living quarters, of communication arrays that bristle with antennas pointed back toward Earth. You watch the transformation with mixed feelings. On one hand, it is thrilling to see so many minds gathering to study what you've found, to witness the birth of humanity's first true off-world research station. On the other hand, something is being lost. The silence, the intimacy, the sense that Mars was sharing its secrets with you alone, trusting you to be their steward. The new arrivals are a diverse group. There are xenobiologists and geologists, linguists and archaeologists, engineers and physicians. There are also people whose roles are less clear: corporate liaisons, military advisors, government representatives from a dozen different nations. They all want the same thing: access to the chamber, to the Guardians, to the knowledge that lies buried in the Martian stone. But they do not all want it for the same reasons. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, a linguist from Japan, becomes one of your closest collaborators. She is small and precise, with eyes that miss nothing, and a mind that approaches the alien symbols with the reverence of a scholar deciphering ancient scripture. She spends hours in the chamber with you, photographing the carvings, cataloguing the patterns, searching for grammatical structures or recurring motifs. Language is never just communication, she tells you one day as you sit together in the chamber, the guardian watching silently from its alcove. It's a window into thought itself. The way a culture structures its language reveals how it structures reality, how it categorizes experience, what it values. If we can crack this language, we won't just be able to read their words, we'll be able to think their thoughts. You find her presence calming. Unlike some of the others, she does not rush, does not demand immediate results. She understands that this is work that requires patience, intuition, time. She treats the chamber like a temple, removing her boots before entering, moving quietly, speaking in hushed tones. Not everyone shares her approach. Dr. Marcus Webb, a material scientist from the United States, represents a different philosophy entirely. He is tall and broad-shouldered, with a booming voice and an impatience that manifests in every gesture. He wants samples, pieces of the structure, fragments of the guardian's flesh, core samples from the walls. He wants to disassemble, analyze, reverse engineer. We're not going to learn anything by just looking, he argues at one of the daily briefings, his frustration evident. We need to understand the composition, the molecular structure, the engineering principles. That means we need physical samples. That means we need to be willing to damage some of this to save all of it. Chen, who has remained as expedition leader, shakes her head firmly. We've been over this, Marcus. The protocols are clear. Non-invasive study only, at least for the first year. We document, we scan, we analyze what we can without disturbing the site. Protocols written by people who aren't here, Webb shoots back. Protocols written by committees on Earth who don't understand what we're dealing with. Every day we wait is a day we're not learning, not advancing, not preparing for whatever comes next. You speak up, surprising yourself with the force in your voice. This isn't a machine to be taken apart. It's a living archive. The Guardians trusted us with their knowledge. Cutting them open, tearing down their structures, that would be a violation of that trust. Webb turns to you, his expression somewhere between pity and exasperation. With all due respect, you've been alone out here for months. You've formed an emotional attachment which is understandable, but we can't let sentiment stand in the way of science. This is too important. It's not sentiment, you reply, keeping your voice level. It's understanding something you don't. The Guardians aren't just waiting to be studied, they're waiting to be understood. There's a difference. The briefing dissolves into argument, different factions taking different sides. Some support Chen's cautious approach, arguing for patience and respect. Others side with Webb, insisting that humanity needs to move faster, learn more, prepare for the possibility that Mars's secrets might be needed to solve crises back on Earth. Climate change, resource depletion, the endless conflicts that threaten to tear human civilization apart. You leave the briefing exhausted, seeking the solitude of the desert. But even that is becoming harder to find. There are rovers now, tracks crisscrossing the landscape, markers and equipment scattered across what was once pristine terrain. The module where you first woke up has been converted into a storage facility, stripped of its mystery, catalogued and explained. Progress, you suppose. But it feels like something precious is slipping away. That night you dream of the Guardian. In the dream it speaks to you, not in words but in images, in sensations, in a form of communication that bypasses language entirely. You see Mars as it was, blue and green, with oceans that stretched from horizon to horizon, clouds that swirled in complex patterns, mountains that scraped the edge of space. You see cities that grew like crystals, organic and geometric at once, integrated into the landscape rather than imposed upon it. You see the Martians themselves, tall and slender like the Guardian, but varied in form, in colour, in the subtle differences that distinguish individuals. They do not walk so much as flow, their movements graceful and economical. They communicate through touch, through bioluminescent displays that ripple across their skin, through harmonics that resonate in frequencies beyond human hearing. And you see their science, their philosophy, their art. They did not separate these disciplines the way humans do. For them, understanding the universe was an aesthetic act, a spiritual practice, a form of love. Their technology was not built to conquer nature, but to participate in it, to become partners in the cosmic dance rather than mere observers or exploiters. But you also see their downfall. It comes slowly, inexorably, like a tide that cannot be turned back. The sun changes, growing dimmer, its output fluctuating in ways that destabilize the climate. The planet's core cools, the magnetic field weakens, the atmosphere begins to bleed away into space. They try everything, geoengineering projects that span continents, atmospheric processes, artificial magnetospheres. For a time, these efforts hold back the inevitable, but only for a time, and so they make a choice. Rather than flee to other worlds, which they have the capability to do, they choose to stay, to bear witness, to preserve their knowledge for whoever might come after. They retreat underground into the spaces where water still flows, where geothermal warmth still radiates, where life can endure in reduced but sustainable forms. And they create the Guardians, not quite alive, not quite machine, but something in between, to watch over the archives, to wait for the next chapter of the story. You wake with tears on your face, the dream still vivid in your mind, and you know, with absolute certainty, that it was not just a dream. It was a transmission, a teaching, a gift from the Guardian to you. The knowledge you need to understand what Mars is asking of humanity. You find Tanaka in the linguistics lab, surrounded by displays showing the alien symbols in various configurations. She looks up as you enter, noting your expression. "You've had a breakthrough," she says. It is not a question. You nod and begin to describe the dream, the visions, the understanding that came with them. She listens without interruption, her eyes growing wider as you speak. When you finish, she is silent for a long moment. "If what you're saying is true," she says finally, "then this isn't a written language in the traditional sense. It's a mnemonic system, a trigger for deeper knowledge that's transmitted, what? Telepathically? Through some kind of quantum entanglement? Through a medium we don't even have a name for yet?" "I don't know the mechanism," you admit. "But yes, the symbols aren't meant to be read the way we read text. They're meant to be experienced, to open pathways in the mind that allow for direct transfer of understanding. The Guardians have been waiting for someone who could receive that transmission. I think my time alone here, the isolation, the exposure to this place, it changed something in me, made me receptive in a way I wasn't before." Tanaka sits back, processing this. Then the question becomes, can we replicate that receptivity? Can we teach others to receive these transmissions? Or are you unique, the only translator we have? It is a question you have been avoiding because the answer frightens you. If you're the only one who can communicate with the Guardians in this way, then you become indispensable, a bottleneck through which all knowledge must flow. The pressure, the responsibility, the inevitable politics that will surround your role, it is almost too much to contemplate. But there is no avoiding it. You are the bridge, whether you want to be or not. Over the following weeks, you begin working with Tanaka and a small team to document everything you can about the transmissions. You return to the chamber daily, spending hours in meditation-like states before the Guardian, opening yourself to whatever it wishes to share. The information comes in waves, sometimes clear and structured, sometimes fragmentary and dreamlike. You emerge from these sessions exhausted, drained, but filled with knowledge that you struggle to articulate in human terms. You learn about Martian physics, which approach the universe not as a collection of particles and forces, but as a unified field of relationships, of information flowing through space-time like music through an instrument. You learn about their biology, which was not based on competition and survival, but on cooperation and integration, each organism existing as a node in a planetary network of consciousness. You learn about their mistakes too, the times they prioritized efficiency over sustainability, the moments they ignored warning signs, the periods when hubris convinced them they could control systems too complex to be controlled. These lessons come with a weight of sorrow, as though the Guardian is reliving its civilization's failures, hoping that by sharing them it can spare humanity the same fate. But not everyone is interested in these lessons. The political situation in the camp deteriorates as different factions jockey for influence. Webb's contingent grows more vocal, demanding action, results, tangible benefits from the discovery. They are backed by corporate interests on Earth, companies that see Mars not as a teacher, but as a resource, a treasure trove of advanced technology that could be exploited for profit. There are also the military advisors, quiet men and women who observe everything but say little. You catch them watching you sometimes, their expressions unreadable, and you wonder what they are thinking, what they are planning, whether they see the Guardians as a threat to be neutralized or a weapon to be claimed. The tension comes to a head during a supply delivery from Earth. Along with food and equipment, the ship carries new orders, classified, urgent, addressed to a Colonel Reeves, a man you've seen around the camp but never spoken to directly. Whatever the orders contain, they change everything. Reeves calls a meeting, this time with only select personnel. You're included, as is Chen, Webb, Tanaka, and a handful of others. Okafor is notably absent, as are most of the pure research scientists. Reeves is a man in his 50s, with iron-grey hair and eyes that have seen things he does not speak about. He stands at the head of the table in the command module, a tablet in his hands, and begins without preamble. Earth has determined that the situation here poses a potential security risk, he says. We have credible intelligence suggesting that other nations are planning their own missions to Mars, specifically to this site. There is concern that the technology here could fall into hostile hands, that the knowledge the Guardians possess could be weaponized. Therefore, new protocols are being put into effect immediately. Chen leans forward, her expression alarmed. What kind of protocols? Restricted access to the chamber, Reeves replies. Enhanced security measures, a full inventory and analysis of all Guardian technology, with an emphasis on understanding potential military applications. And he pauses, his eyes finding you. Mandatory psychological evaluation and monitoring for anyone who has had direct contact with the alien entities, for their own safety, of course. The room erupts. Chen is on her feet, arguing that these measures violate every principle of scientific cooperation, that they will turn Mars into a battlefield rather than a research site. Webb, surprisingly, also objects, pointing out that restricting access will slow research to a crawl. Tanaka says nothing, but you see the fear in her eyes. You remain silent, your mind racing. Mandatory monitoring, restricted access, military applications. They're going to try to control this, to own it, to turn the Guardian's gift into a tool for the same conflicts and competitions that have plagued humanity since the beginning. This is exactly what the Guardians feared. This is exactly what Mars has been trying to warn against. When the arguing dies down, you speak. Your voice is quiet, but something in it makes everyone turn to listen. If you do this, you say, you will lose everything. The Guardians will withdraw. The transmissions will stop. Mars will become what you seem to think it already is. A dead rock with some interesting artifacts. The knowledge you're hoping to extract, the technology you want to exploit. It doesn't work that way. It's not lying around waiting to be picked up. It's offered, shared, given freely to those who approach with the right intention. And if you approach with the wrong intention, you trail off, letting the implication hang. Reeves regards you with something that might be respect or might be concern. Are you threatening us? I'm warning you, you reply, not on my behalf, on behalf of what this place represents. You can point guns at the Guardians, you can restrict access to the chamber, you can lock me up and study me like a lab rat. But none of that will get you what you want. The only way forward is the way we've been going. Slowly, respectfully, with humility. Anything else will fail. There's a long silence. Finally, Chen speaks. There's precedent for this, she says. Antarctica, the Antarctic Treaty System. Multiple nations agreed to keep an entire continent demilitarized, dedicated to peaceful scientific research. We could do the same thing here. Make Mars neutral ground. A place that belongs to all of humanity, not to any one nation or corporation. Webb nods slowly. It's not a bad idea, but it would require buy-in from every major power. And right now, with tensions on Earth the way they are, then we make them understand what's at stake, you say. We show them what I've seen, what the Guardians have shared. We make it clear that this isn't just about technology or resources. It's about our future as a species, whether we're going to grow up and join the larger community of intelligent life in the universe, or whether we're going to destroy ourselves fighting over scraps. Reeves shakes his head. I appreciate the sentiment, but I have orders, and orders don't change just because someone has a nice vision. Then we'll go over your head, Chen says firmly. We'll broadcast this globally, make it public. Let the people of Earth decide what kind of species they want to be. That would be a violation of protocols, Reeves warns. Possibly treason, depending on how it's framed. Then arrest me, Chen says. But I'm not going to sit here and watch us turn the most important discovery in human history into another front in our endless stupid wars. The tension in the room is explosive. You can see Reeves calculating, weighing his options, trying to determine how far he can push before something breaks. And you realize that this moment right now is exactly what the Guardians has been preparing for. This is the test. Not whether humanity can learn from their technology, but whether humanity can transcend its own worst instincts, choose cooperation over competition, wisdom over power. You stand, your heart pounding, and make a decision. I'm going to the chamber, you announce. Anyone who wants to come can come. Anyone who wants to stop me will have to shoot me. Because I'm done with meetings and protocols and politics. The Guardians have something to show us, something important, and I'm not going to let fear or greed or bureaucracy stand in the way anymore. You walk toward the exit, half expecting to hear the click of a weapon being readied, the command to stop. But instead you hear footsteps behind you. Tanaka, then Okafor, who must have been listening from outside, then Chen, then others, a growing group of scientists and researchers who have had enough of being told what to do by people who aren't here, who don't understand what's at stake. Webb hesitates, then joins as well, his expression conflicted but resolved. Reeves watches the exodus with an unreadable expression. Finally he speaks. "I'll be reporting this," he says, but he does not try to stop you. The group walks across the Martian landscape in silence, a procession of precious suits and helmets, of scientists staging the quietest, most profound rebellion in human history. The sun is setting, casting the desert in shades of amber and rust, and the two moons are rising, watching like witnesses. When you reach the chamber, you lead them inside, into the space that has become sacred to you. The Guardian is there, as always, and as you approach, the screens flicker to life. But this time, they show something different. Not images from the past, not visions of ancient Mars, but something happening now, in real time. The screens show Earth, the blue marble hanging in space, beautiful and fragile and utterly irreplaceable. But as you watch, the perspective shifts, zooms in, showing cities and forests, oceans and deserts, showing the damage, the scarred landscapes, the polluted waters, the atmosphere thickening with greenhouse gases, showing the conflicts, borders drawn and redrawn in blood, resources hoarded while others starve, the endless cycle of violence and retaliation. But then the view shifts again, and you see something else. Acts of kindness, of cooperation, of humans working together to solve problems, to heal wounds, to build rather than destroy. You see scientists sharing data across borders, activists fighting to protect the environment, ordinary people making choices that prioritize the future over the present, the collective over the individual. And you understand what the Guardian is showing you. Earth stands at a crossroads, just as Mars once did. The choices made now in these critical years will determine whether humanity survives and thrives, or whether it joins the long list of civilizations that reached for the stars and fell short. Mars cannot save you. The Guardians cannot solve your problems for you, but they can offer you a mirror, a reflection, a chance to see yourselves clearly and choose wisely. The Guardian moves, stepping down from its alcove for the first time since you arrived. The assembled scientists gasp, stepping back, and you feel a wave of energy wash over you. Not threatening, but powerful, ancient, profound. The Guardian approaches you, and you stand your ground, meeting its dark eyes. It reaches out one long-fingered hand and places it on your chest, over your heart. And suddenly, you are not just receiving a transmission, you're part of it, a conduit, a living link between the Guardian and everyone present. Knowledge floods through you and out into the minds of those around you. Not words, not images, but pure understanding. You feel Tanaka gasp as she suddenly comprehends the structure of the Martian language, sees how it maps directly onto consciousness itself. You feel Webb's shock as he understands that the technology here is not machinery, but something closer to art, to intention made manifest through principles that human physics has not yet discovered. You feel Chen's wonder as she grasps the true history of Mars, the billions of years of life and death and transformation compressed into a moment of perfect clarity. And you feel something else, the presence of the others who are here with you. Not just the humans, but the planet itself. Mars as a living entity, a consciousness that has been waiting, watching, hoping that the newcomers would be worthy of the inheritance they were being offered. The transmission ends, and the Guardian withdraws its hand. You stumble, and Tanaka catches you, her eyes wide with tears. "I saw," she whispers. "I felt. Oh God, I understand now." Around the chamber, scientists are on their knees, weeping or laughing or simply sitting in stunned silence. The experience has changed them, just as it changed you. They're no longer just observers, no longer detached, analysts studying alien artifacts. They are participants, students, initiates into mysteries that humanity has barely begun to comprehend. Webb approaches you, his face transformed. "I was wrong," he says simply. "I thought we needed to take this apart to understand it." But understanding isn't about dissection. It's about integration, connection, becoming part of the story rather than just reading it. You nod, too exhausted to speak. The Guardian returns to its alcove, settling back into stillness. But you can feel that something has shifted. A threshold has been crossed. Humanity has passed its first test, not with flying colours perhaps, but with enough grace to be allowed to continue. Over the following days, word of what happened spreads through the camp. Some dismiss it as mass hallucination, a psychological phenomenon brought on by isolation and the strangeness of the environment. But others, the ones who were there, who felt the transmission, know better. And slowly, gradually, they begin to change the culture of the base, to push back against the military posturing and corporate manoeuvring, to insist that Mars be treated as what it truly is, a gift, not a prize. Reeves, surprisingly, becomes an ally. Whatever he reports back to Earth, it must be compelling, because the orders change, the protocols relax, the security measures are scaled back, and most importantly, discussions begin about creating an international framework for Mars research, something modelled on the Antarctic Treaty, but deeper, more comprehensive, with enforcement mechanisms to ensure that no one nation or entity can claim ownership of the alien legacy. It is not perfect. There are still disagreements, still factions that want to move faster or slower, still people who see Mars through the lens of their own agendas. But the balance has shifted. The understanding has taken root, and you allow yourself to hope that maybe, just maybe, humanity is ready for what comes next. Late one night, you are back in your quarters, a small module you share with 2 other researchers, when you receive a message. It is audio only, transmitted on a private channel, and when you play it, you hear a voice you have not heard in how long? Forever? Never? "We know who you are," the voice says. A woman, middle-aged, with an accent you cannot place. "We know what happened to you, how you came to be on Mars, and we want you to know that you were right to keep it secret. But the time for secrets is ending. Soon you will need to decide who you really are, the person you were before, or the person Mars has made you. Choose wisely." The message ends. You sit in the darkness, your heart racing, trying to understand what you just heard. Someone knows about your past, about the life you cannot remember. Someone has answers to questions you've been too afraid to ask. But who? And how? And what do they want from you? You lie awake for hours, wrestling with the decision. Part of you wants to know, desperately, to remember who you were, where you came from, how you ended up alone on Mars with no memory and a suit that shouldn't exist. But another part of you fears that knowledge, fears that it will unmake everything you have become, drag you back into a life that no longer fits. By morning you have made your decision. You need to know. not because the past defines you, but because you cannot move forward with a ghost at your back, with questions that fester in the dark corners of your mind. You trace the message's origin, not difficult, with the base's communication logs. It came from one of the newer arrivals, a woman named Dr. Elena Kossar, a neuroscientist from Russia who specializes in memory and consciousness. You've seen her around, but never spoken to her directly. You find her in one of the biology labs working alone. When you enter, she looks up without surprise, as though she has been expecting you. "You came," she says. Her English is accented but precise. "Good. We have much to discuss." "Who am I?" you ask bluntly. No pleasantries, no small talk. You're done with evasion. She gestures to a chair and you sit. "Your name was Dr. Adrian Cross. You were a neuropsychologist, one of the leading researchers in altered states of consciousness, in the neurological basis of mystical experience. 5 years ago, you disappeared. Your colleagues assumed you were dead. Adrian Cross. The name means nothing to you." But as she speaks, tiny fragments surface, flashes of memory so faint they might be imagination, a lecture hall, equipment, a face in a mirror that might be yours, younger, more certain. "What happened to me?" you ask. Kosa's expression is troubled. You were part of a classified project, an attempt to create, let us call it, an enhanced consciousness interface, a way to allow humans to perceive and interact with forms of intelligence that operate on different frequencies, different principles than our own. The military was interested, of course, but so were you, for your own reasons. You believed that humanity's next evolutionary step would be cognitive, not physical, that we needed to expand our capacity for perception, for understanding, if we were to survive as a species. The pieces are falling into place, forming a picture you do not want to see. The experiment went wrong. Not wrong, Kossar corrects, but further than anyone anticipated. You successfully altered your consciousness, opened yourself to forms of perception that should not have been possible. But the process was traumatic. It shattered your previous personality, your memories, your sense of self. We thought we had lost you, and then, she pauses, then you disappeared. Took a shuttle that was being prepared for a Mars supply run. No one knew you were aboard until you were already gone. By the time we realized, it was too late to turn back. You sit in stunned silence, trying to integrate this information with everything you know about yourself, Adrian Cross, a scientist who deliberately broke his own mind in pursuit of expanded consciousness, a man who stole a ride to Mars because... why? Because he was drawn here? Because he knew, somehow, that this was where he needed to be? So I'm not just someone who ended up on Mars by accident, you say slowly. I'm someone who chose this, who made myself into someone who could communicate with the Guardians. Perhaps, Kossar says, or perhaps the Guardians themselves were calling, and you were the first to hear. Cause and effect become unclear when dealing with consciousness at these levels. Did you open yourself to them, or did they open you? Both may be true. Why are you telling me this now? Because Earth needs to know what you are, Kossar says. Not just a survivor, not just a translator. You are proof that humanity can evolve, can expand beyond its current limitations. You are the prototype for what we might become. And there are those on Earth, my employers among them, who want to understand how to replicate what you have achieved, who want to create more people like you. The implications are staggering. An army of enhanced humans, able to perceive and interact with alien intelligence, able to access the transmissions from the Guardians. It could be humanity's salvation. a way to rapidly acquire the knowledge needed to solve your existential crises. Or it could be a disaster, a new form of humanity that leaves the old behind, creating a division that could tear your species apart. What do you want from me, you ask? Help us, Kosa says. Help us understand the process you went through. Let us study you, safely, ethically, not to exploit, but to learn, to give humanity a choice about its future. You stand, needing space, needing air. I need to think about this. Of course, Kosa says. But Adrian, she uses the name deliberately and you flinch. Time is running out. Earth is approaching a breaking point. Climate collapse, resource wars, the fracturing of international cooperation. We need what Mars has to teach us, and we need it soon. You may be the only way to accelerate that learning enough to matter. You leave without answering, walking out into the Martian day, your mind churning. Adrian Cross, a man who sacrificed everything, his identity, his memories, his very self, to achieve a form of consciousness that could bridge worlds. A man who is both dead and alive, replaced by whoever you are now. And the question remains, who are you? The person you were, or the person you have become? Adrian Cross, or the nameless wanderer who woke up in the Red Desert? Can you be both? Must you choose? You walk to the edge of the camp, staring out at the horizon, at the mountains where the Guardians wait in their timeless vigil. And you realize that the answer has been there all along, woven into every transmission, every vision, every lesson Mars has tried to teach you. You are not one or the other. You are the transformation itself, the bridge between what was and what will be. Adrian Cross died so that something new could be born, something that had never existed before. A human consciousness shaped by two worlds, able to translate between them, to carry meaning across the void that separates species and civilizations and ways of being. You are not the endpoint. You are the beginning, the first step in an evolution that will take centuries, millennia, to unfold. And whether that evolution happens safely, ethically, with wisdom and care, depends on the choices you make now. You return to find Kosar and give her your answer. You will help, but on your terms. The research will be transparent, public, subject to international oversight. The techniques developed will be available to anyone who wants them, not hoarded by governments or corporations. And most importantly, anyone who chooses this path must do so freely, understanding that they are not just gaining new abilities, they are becoming something new, something that cannot go back to what they were. It is a gamble, a leap of faith that humanity can handle this responsibility, can resist the temptation to weaponize or monopolize what you represent. But as you stand there, feeling the connection to Mars thrumming through your transformed consciousness, you know it is the right choice. Because the alternative, keeping this locked away, hidden, restricted, would betray everything the Guardians have tried to teach you. Knowledge is not meant to be hoarded. It is meant to be shared, to flow like water through the channels of consciousness, nourishing and transforming whatever it touches. And if humanity cannot handle that, cannot rise to meet this challenge, then perhaps you do not deserve the inheritance Mars is offering. But you believe, you have to believe, that you can. That hidden within the violence and greed and short-sightedness, there is also wisdom, compassion, the capacity for growth. You have seen it in Chen's leadership, in Tanaka's reverence, in Webb's transformation, in the tears of scientists kneeling in the chamber after their first true transmission. Humanity is not perfect, but neither were the Martians. They made mistakes, failed in crucial ways, lost their world to forces they could not or would not control. But they learned, they preserved what they could, they reached across millions of years to offer their hard-won wisdom to whoever came next. And now you, Adrian Cross, the nameless wanderer, the bridge between worlds, have the chance to honour that gift, to help your species take its next stumbling, uncertain, beautiful step toward whatever future awaits among the stars. You look up at the rust-coloured sky, at the sun hanging low on the horizon, at the stars beginning to emerge in the gathering dusk, and for the first time since you woke up on this red desert world, you feel that you truly understand why you are here. Not by accident, not by fate, but by choice. A choice made by someone you used to be, for the sake of someone you have become, in service of a future that has not yet been written, and that future begins now.